Good evening. I hope you are all doing well. Sorry for the last minute logistics change on location. I will obviously post this here as I normally do. Just wasn't able to make it in person this evening. Today, we are going to be learning the second half of Tzadi Aleph Amud Beis. We're actually on the last of the short lines where it says Reish Lakish, and we're going to be learning about a number of psukim that seem to have some type of conflict, and the resolution of those conflicts will be a lot of the tochen for tonight, and then we'll do as much as we can on Daf Tzadi Beis as well. Let's get started right away. Says the Gemara as follows. Resh Lakish Rami. Resh Lakish had a number of psukim that didn't fit with one another. Ksiv, one of them said, Bam iver ufiseh haravi oledes yachdav. That people who were blind, people who were maimed, that they were going to be born together. And there is some reference here that when they were to be born in Trias Amesim, they were going to be born with the same maladies and illnesses that they had initially. But Uchsiv Az Yadaleg Az in the time of like Az Yimale Schok in the times of the next world, Az Yadaleg Ke'ayal, the person who has been maimed, he's going to be dancing like a ram. Pisech v'saron l'shon ilem kinivku v'amidbar maimun u'cholim ba'arava. The people who are lame are going to jump like animals, and the mouths of those who are mute are going to be speaking, etc. So that's a stira. Do we say that in Trias Hamesim the people are going to be just like they were before they died with the same maladies that they had, or no, they're actually going to be healed? So says the Gemara, how could it be? And the Gemara responds, Omdin b'mumad. Yes, during Trias Hamesim, they are going to show up as though they are still the same. However, umisrapin, there's going to be something miraculous. So according to the way Reish Lakish interpreted the psukim, they're going to start out after Trias Hamesim, they'll be reborn, Trias Hamesim with their maladies, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu will heal them. And Ula Rami, now Ula has a couple of psukim that he feels are contradictory. Ksiv, one pasuk says, Bila hamaves lanetzach, u'macha Hashem Elokim dima me'al kol panim. This pasuk is familiar to us because it's a pasuk that we hear at funerals. And it means that a Kadosh Baruch Hu will hide away death forever, and Hashem will wipe away the tears from people's faces. But Uchsiv, it also says, Ki anar ben mea shana yamus, Lo yihyeh misham od ol yami od ul yamim. So the first pasuk seems to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will get rid of all death, that in the times of Trias Hamesim no one will die. But the next pasuk seems to say that people will die at 100. So says the Gemara, lo kasha, and this is not a politically correct answer, but it's emes lamito shel Torah. It's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, lo kasha, kan be Israel, kan be'ovdei kochavim. When we talk about a Trias Hamesim, where there will be no death altogether, that's by the Yidden. But when it comes to saying that people will live till 100, that eventually they will pass away, that's talking about ovdei kochavim. Asks the Gemara, Farvus, like why are they there in Trias Hamesim anyways? Vovdei Kochavim Mai Ba'u Hasam. What is their role that they play there? 2/3 of the way down. Says the Gemara, Hanach Techsi Bahu. It's about Goyim in the period of Trias Hamesim that the pasuk says, V'amdu Zarim V'Rod Sonchem Uvnei Nechar Akarechem V'Chormechem. There will be shepherds. They will be people who are farmers. They will be people who work the vineyard. So says the Gemara. And now Rav Chizda points out that there are a couple of psukim that don't seem to align with one another. See, one pasuk says, V'chafra halavana, the moon's going to be embarrassed, Uvo shachama, and the sun's going to be embarrassed, Kim malach Hashem sebakos, because the Kadosh Baruch Hu's presence was brighter than their presence. Uchsi, but then there's another pasuk that seems to say, V'haya or halavana ke'orachama. It seems that the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. Ve'orachama yehyeh shivasayim Kior Shivas Hayamim, and the sun will be so bright like during the Sheish Yimei Bereishis. So So that sounds like the sun's going to be very bright. The previous pasuk said that the sun was going to be bosha, will be embarrassed. So how do we rectify the contrast in these two psukim? Says the Gemara, lo kasha. Rav Chizda answers as follows: Kan limos hamashiach. The second pasuk, which says that the sun is going to be super bright, that's limos hamashiach. That's in the times of Mashiach. But Kan, where the Malach Hashem Tzavakos, where Hashem is going to be, the Melech Hashem Tzavakos is going to be so bright, that's La'olam Haba, which is still a higher level. Ula Shmuel, this causes a problem. This answer doesn't work according to everyone. Ula Shmuel da'amar ein bein ha'olam hazeh limosa Mashiach el shibud galios bilvad. According to those who say that the difference between olam hazeh, between Yimosa Mashiach and shibud galios is only, sorry, between olam haba and Yimosa Mashiach is shibud galios, is whether or not we will be subjugated to being under another nation. So then how does he understand that, right? Because we wanted to say that this bright out light was a difference between Yimosa Mashiach and Olam Haba. But the Gemara says that the light wasn't the difference between those two. Shmuel had said that the difference between the two was only Shibud Malchios. Says the Gemara, Lo Kasha, this is not a problem. Kan b'machne tzadikim, kan b'machne shchina. It depends on your location, right? Really, the lighting in general is already present. It's just that it hits different locations in different ways. And how is that so? So when it comes to machne tzadikim, so that is that's a place where the lighting is one way. Kan b'machne shchina, but in the machne shchina, that light's going to be ever so brighter. And that is how the Gemara explains these psukim, even according to Shmuel. And then Rava has a problem as well. Ksiv, ani amis va'achayeh. One pasuk says that Hashem will put people to death and make them alive again, which kind of implies that however they died is how they will live. So whatever phase they were in when they died, their age, their stature, whatever, they'd come back the same. But then the next pasuk says, "Uchsiv mochatzti va'ani arpeh," and another one says that Hashem was the one who hurt those people, who killed them, and then He will also heal them, which makes it seem like they're not going to be exactly like they were before they died. So says the Gemara, as we get toward the bottom of Tzadi Aleph Amud Beis, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ma she'ani memis ani mechaya. So when I put someone to death, I also bring them back to life. V'hadar ma shemachatzti v'ani arpeh. And whatever maladies they had, they will bring back when they are brought in Tchias HaMesim. That said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will then heal them. And the Brisa says, Tanu Rabbanan ani amis va'achayeh. The Brisa says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will kill and revive. Yachol shetei misa be'echad v'chayim be'echad. I might have thought that if person A dies, it's on the day that person B is born. Different people, right? I can tell you as a mole, I've been to brises where there really was a very unique set of timing. This just recently happened. I know two people like this where the mother gave birth within days of the passing of a family member. So maybe we would have thought that it was Misa be'echad and Chaim be'echad. Person A, the bubby died. Person B, the grandson, the granddaughter was born and they named after the bubby. So says the Gemara, Kederach Sha'olam, knowing that's well, Talmud Lomar, that's not how the world turns. That's really not what's going on. Rather, Machatzti ve'ani erpeh. Really, the pasuk of Machaste Ani Yarpeh teaches us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that gave the injury in the first place, and He'll heal. Ma mechitza urefua be'echad. Just like the injury and the healing, we're all talking about person A. So too, when it comes to Af Misa v'Chaim be'echad, that when a person dies, they will then become alive again. And in fact, the importance of this explanation is as follows: Mikan tshuva la'omrim ein tchias hamesim min haTorah. Rahman al we said that was one of the problems of Perek Chelek, is that in the beginning it starts out all rosy, that Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelek l'olam haba. But the next line of the Mishnah stipulates that if you don't believe in these things, you're in big trouble. So here the Gemara says we have a pasuk in Chumash that teaches us that this is true. Mikan tshuva la'omrim ein tchias hamesim min haTorah. And Tanya, another brisa, Amar Rav Meir. We've already seen so many psukim and so many rayas. Clearly, Perek Chelek is spending a long time on this because it is fundamental. It's fundamental to the ethos of the Orthodox Jew. Shneimar oz yashir Moshe uvnei Yisrael as hashir azos Lashem. Sometimes the things that we say every day are the things that we overlook. Because what does it say? Oz yashir, then Moshe will sing. Shar lo ne'amar, it doesn't say that he sang in the past tense. Ella yashir. Mikan l'tchias hamesim min Torah. Beautiful raya. And Kayotze Badavar, we have another pasuk out to Omer that says as follows: Oz Yivne Yoshua Mizbeach LaShem. That Yoshua will in the future build a Mizbeach for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bana in the past, it doesn't say that Oz Bana Yoshua. Oz Yivne, that in the future he will. Ela Yivne, and therefore as well, Mikan L'Tchias HaMeisim Min Torah. Ay, Elameata, if that's true, that every time we see the word Yivne, a future word, a yud in the beginning of the word that indicates something will happen in the future and not in the past. Elameata, if that's true, says the Gemara, then Oz Yivneh Shlomo Bama Lichmosh Shikutz Moab. Then maybe in the future, when there is a resurrection, that Shlomo will build an Avodah Zarah Bama for what the Gemara says over here. He'll build one for Kamosh, which was a type of Avodah Zarah. This was what Moab used to use. That can't be. Not every time that it says Yud and it's a future word that he's going to be Yivneh Avodah Zarah. That can't be. Ela Ma Ela Vakasuv Ki Lubana. Says the Gemara, no. What the Gemara meant over there, that when the pasuk says Yivne Lichmosh, that he was going to build an avodah zarah for Chemosh, this avodah zarah that the Moavi people used to worship. So then the Gemara says it was just Ma'ale alav akasuv. It was just to say that it was as though he had built it, even though he had yet to build it. Next, another raya. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, minayin l'tchias hamesim mina Torah. How do we know that tchias hamesim is mina Torah? I think this is probably our 10th or 11th raya since we started the parak, but I'm not counting. Shenemar ashreyo shevei veisecha od yehalalucha sela, the yod yehalalucha. We will praise in the future. Yilelucha lo ne'amar, in the past tense. Ella yehalalucha mikan l'tchias hamesim mina Torah. Another pasuk that we say every day. Ashrei Yoshvei Beisecha Od Yehalalucha Sela. There will be praise in the future. The haraya that there is Tchias Hamesim. V'amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi Kol Omer Shira Ba'olam Hazeh. Anyone who is zoche to Shira, according to many Meforshim, not necessarily here, but there's a sefer called Shiur B'Tefillah that was written by Rabbi Pinkus, and he speaks about Shira being a specific form of Tefillah. So anyone who says Shira, Zoche v'Omer la'olam haba, anyone who says Shira in this world, they'll merit to say it in the next world. Shnei Amar, Ashrei Yoshevei Beisecha Od Yalalucha Sela. That you'll merit to say that as well. It's interesting because the word Shira is not found in the pasuk. I don't know exactly how they extracted this from here, but that's what the Gemara says, is that anyone who gives praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world will be zoche to do so in the next. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan, another raya, minayin l'tchias hamesim min Torah. How do we know that there is tchias hamesim? Shneimar kol tzofayich nasu kol yachdav yiranenu. The pasuk says, for those who are able to be chozeh, for those who are tzofayich, the people who are like neviim, so they have called out, and they all sang out together at the same time. And it doesn't say rinanu in the past. Rinanu lo ne'emar ela yiranenu in the future. Mikan l'tchias hamesim min Torah. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan, coming to the bottom of the page, it's a Zaftaga Amud. The Gemara says that in the name of Reb Chia and the name of Reb Yochanan, Asidim kol hanavim kulan omrim shira bekol echad. Everyone is going to sing together in the same voice, which is miraculous. 2 Jews and 3 opinions, but everybody sings the same song. Shneimar kol tzofayich, the voice of all the people who can see in the future, namely the Nevi'im, nasu kol yachdav yiranenu. They'll carry all of their voices together. Amar Yehuda, Amar Rav. The Gemara says, and this sounds like a little bit of a tangent. We'll see soon why we went this route. Kol hamonea halacha mipi Talmud. If a Rebbe holds back a piece of Torah from a Talmud, ki ilu goz laminach lasavosav. It's as though the Rebbe stole from the student. He stole a nachla from that person. Why is that true? Because, says the Gemara, Shenemar Torah tzivolanu Moshe Morasha kilis Yaakov Morasha hi lechol Yisrael mishesh yismei breishis. from day one. And this actually is a little bit of a remiss to the principle of histakel be'oraisa uvara alma, that the way that the world was created during Sheshis and Mebreshis was through the lens of the Torah. Those were the architectural plans. And that's why we have a reference here of Sheshis and Mebreshis. Amar Rav Chana bar Bizna, Amar Reb Shimon Chasida. Kol hamoneh halacha mipin Talmud. Same thing. Anyone who limits teaching Torah to a Talmud, afilu ubarin shebeme'e imo mekala linoso. Even a fetus will criticize that person. Shneemar, as the pasuk says, monea bar, someone who withholds bar. Bar typically is translated as grain. As we turn to the top of Tzadi Beis Amad Aleph, yikvuhu leom. Yikvuhu leom, a curse of the nations. Now let's go through each of these words. Ve'ein le'om ela ubarin. We know that the word om is a reference to a fetus. Shene'emar ul'om mil'om ye'ematz. We know that when she was pregnant with twins, that the Torah says that ul'om mil'om ye'ematz, that one nation is going to be more powerful than the next. And how do we know that when the pasuk says yikvuhu, that it's talking about a curse? Ve'ein kavo ela klala. Shene'emar ma'ekov lo kaboel. This is talking about the story of Balak and Bilam, and there the word ekov is used to curse. Ve'ein bar el Torah. Normally the word bar means grain. Why over here do we assume that bar means Torah? Shene'emar nashku bar pen ye'enaf. This is what the pasuk says. You should really try to be var. You should have the clarity of and the purity of your heart, so that Hashem doesn't get angry at us. Right? That's what the word ye'enaf means. Ula Bar Shmuel Omer, he says, Minakvenoso kichavara, that if a person were to not teach Torah, they were to hold back Torah from a Talmud, they would be pierced like a colander. I just strained noodles this morning for my kids. 1,000 holes in one colander. So that's going to be the consequence for someone who holds back Torah. Where do we see this from? Because ksiv hacha yikvuhu le'om, u'ksiv hacha v'yikov chor bedalto. So we see the word yikov is one of making holes. V'amarabaye ki uchle de katzre. This is the fascinating thing. You know, sometimes like in the hoses that in the sprayers that we attach to hoses, there are different modes. So you can kind of spin the top. Some of them have 10 holes, some of them have 20 holes. So the Gemara over here is talking about a tool that was used by people who did laundry, and they would pour the water through a bucket, but at the end of the bucket, there was this thing with many holes in it. And that's what the Gemara is just giving as a mashal as to the punishment of a Rebbe who holds back more than he should from a Talmud. And the Gemara continues, and we're toward the top of Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph, V'im limdo, if a Rebbe does teach Torah to his Talmud, maschara, what's his reward? Amar Rava, Amar Rav Sheshes, Zoche, lebirkas, lebrachos ki Yosef, that he gets brachos like Yosef. Shneemar, as the pasuk says, uvracha lerosh mashbir. The blessing is on the head of the mashbir. The word mashbir means the one who provides. And we know that mashbir is a word that refers to Yosef. Ve'ein mashbir ela Yosef, shenemar Yosef hu ashalit al haaretz hu hamashbir chol haaretz. He was the mashbir, he was the provider. And what's happening over here is that when the pasuk says that Yosef was the mashbir, it's referring to the fact that the Rebbe was the mashbir of Torah. Remember, bar is grain. Bar is Torah. So when we talk about giving out bar, giving out grain, the mashal for Yosef couldn't possibly be more perfect. He's giving out grain, which we already said is a reference to, Torah, and therefore you get the brachos of Yosef Hatzadeh. And the Gemara continues, Amar of Sheshes, Kol hamelamed Torah ba'olam hazeh, anyone who teaches Torah in this world, Zoche u'melamda l'olam haba, will also merit, he will be Zoche to teach Torah in the next world. Shneemar u'marveh gam hu yoreh. The one who satiates will be satiated, which is a very fascinating idea. The one who satiates, you're teaching Torah, ein mayim ela Torah. Torah is water. Water helps things grow. When we learn Torah, when we teach Torah, we're helping ourselves and others grow. And when a person teaches Torah in this world, there's zoche u'malamda l'olam haba. Hamar Rava, Nacharaya, Minayin l'tchias hamesim min Torah. How do we know that tchias hamesim is a din deoraisa? Shenemar yechi Reuven ve'al yamos. Reuven will live and he will not die. Yechi Reuven ba'olam hazeh. When the pasuk says that Ruvain will live, that's a reference to this world. Ba'al yamos lolam haba, that he will not die in the next world. This already hints to the fact that there is Tchias HaMesim. Ravina Amar Mehacha. Ravina says, and he actually gives one of the stronger indicators of a pasuk that speaks about Tchias HaMesim. So says the Gemara, Rav Amar Mehacha. V'rabim miyeshene admas afar yakitzu. A lot of the people, many of the people who are Yeshene Admas Afar, who are sleeping in the ground, they will wake up. However, Eila L'chai Olam, some of these people will waken and they'll be in a permanent world. Ve'ela L'charafos L'dir on Olam, and some are going to be waking up to shame and they'll live a very, very terrible life. So we of course want to be in the prior category. Rava Amar Mehacha Nachamol, another source, says the Gemara, Ve'ata leich laketz v'sanuach v'samod l'goralcha laketz hayamin. This was from Sefer Daniel, and it's referring to Sefer Daniel, that they're saying that he will die, and that after he dies, he will stand up again, v'samod, and he will become born again, and he'll get his kates, he'll get his goral at the kates hayamin, he'll get whatever his portion is at the end of days. The Gemara continues with Divrei Agarata about a third of the way down on Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara says, Amar Rebbe Lazar, Kol Parnas Shemani Gesat Tzibur Benachas. If you have a Parnas, which is typically a discussion not of a philanthropist, even the word Parnas is there, but usually is a reference to a community leader or something along those lines. If you have someone who is a Parnas and he does so Benachas and he does so in a way that's very, very gentle, so says the Gemara, Zocha umanhigam la'olam haba. He'll also merit to do that in the next world as well. So Ne'emar, because the pasuk says, Ki merachamam yinahagim, the one who has rachamim, who guides people with rachamim, va'al mabue mayim nahaleim, and he will be able to guide them over springs of water. Obviously, a deeper idea in the psukim, but that is what the Gemara says. The Amar Rebbe Lazar says, Gdola Dea shenitna bein shtei osios. He says that Dea, knowledge, is something that's very powerful because it's found literally between two letters, but it actually means the two shemos of Hashem. Shenemar ki kel Deos Hashem. Look what the word Deos is sandwiched between the Aleph Lamed of Hashem and Hashem. So we see that because it's flanked on both sides, that there's something special about Dea. And similarly, Va'amar Rebbe Lazar, Gadol Mikdash, for Hebrew there. Gadol Mikdash, Shenitan Ben Shtei Osios. The Mikdash, the Beis HaMikdash is the same. Shen Emar, as the pasuk says, Po'alta Hashem, Mikdash Hashem, Konanu Yadecha. We see here as well that the word Mikdash is flanked on both sides, and therefore, obviously, it's Gadol. Obviously, it's a wonderful thing. Of course, Tanakh is very big, and we don't know Tanakh very well, most of us. But here the Gemara poses a beautiful question. Maskiflar of Ada Karchina. Elameata, if what you're saying is true, that words that are flanked on both sides by Shem Hashem are themselves Gadol, then we have a problem. Gedola Nekama, Shenitna Bein Shtei Osios. Because we have a pasuk, one that we say every Friday, twice on Fridays, once for Shir Shal Yom, and once at the end of Kabbalah Shabbos. What do we see? That the word Nekama is flanked on both sides. Dichsiv, as the pasuk says, Kel Nekamos Hashem, Kel Nekamos Sophia. Look, Kel, followed by Nekamos, followed by Hashem. We see that revenge is something that's flanked by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how can that be a good thing? Amar Le, Rebbe Lazar responded to Rav Ada Karchina. What does he say to him? Lemilse hachinami. For itself, it's actually true, meaning sometimes nikama is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. How many times have we heard or have we said ourselves in this war since October 7th, Hashem yikom damo. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu get nikama on the murderers who killed these innocent people. Kide Ula. This is an idea that's represented by Ula. The Amar Ula, shtei hofayos halalu lama. Why is it that it says hofia twice? Kiel nekamos Hashem, kiel nekamos Sophia. What's the nekamos twice? It says the Gemara, achas lemidas tova, ve'achas lemidas poranos. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. Next, halfway down, V'amar Rebbe Lazar, ki'ilu kol adam sheyesh bo dea. anyone who has Deya, ki'ilu nivne Beis Hamikdash b'yamav. It's as if the Beis Hamikdash was built during his days. Shezen nitan ben shtei osios, v'zen nitan ben shtei osios. So that's what the Gemara says of Deya and Mikdash, repeating the same idea. Although the Gemara here doesn't repeat the psukim, we did see earlier that these two words of Deya and Mikdash were placed between the Shemos of Hashem, and that is why it is considered to be a wonderful thing. It's as if he actually built them. And similarly, the Gemara says, "V'amar Rebbe Lazar, kol adam sheyesh bo deya," anyone who has wisdom, knowledge, I should say, l'sof mis asher, they will become wealthy. Shene'emar uvdas chadarim yimaleu kol hon yikar v'noim. With knowledge in the chadarim, in the rooms, in the storehouse, in your brain, in your neshama, then in all of those chadarim yimalu kol hon yikar v'noim. You'll become very wealthy, and those rooms will be your storehouses for gold. The Amar Rebbe Lazar, Kol Adam She'ein Bo Deya, if a person doesn't have a lot of das, this is a well-known line from the Gemara, Aser Lerachem Alav. So my hype, the person has a low IQ, you're not allowed to have rachamim on them. That can't be what the Gemara means. So the Meforshim explain, even here, the Meforshim explain that that's not what this means. What's happening over here is that if a person doesn't use their das, they're smart people, but they burned away on video games all day. That person is Asher Larachem Alav. We're not talking about someone who has a below 100 IQ. We're talking about someone who doesn't even try. They're not even using their own das to solve problems, to look at the world the right way. And those are the ones that it's Asher to be Merachem on them. Shen Emar, as the Pasuk says, Ki lo am binosu al kain, lo yerachamenu osei v'yosro lo yichunenu. Kodesh Baruch Hu is not going to give him chain. But Baruch Hu is not going to look at him and say, Nebuchad, you. No, you should use your cup. You got a brain in your head, use it. That's what the Gemara says. Another memra from Rebbe Lazar, Amar Rebbe Lazar, 2/3 of the way down on Tzadi Beis, Amar Aleph, says the Gemara. Amar Rebbe Lazar, Kol hanosein pito l'mi she'ein bo deya. Anyone who gives bread, really anyone who supports someone who has no da'as, yisurin bayin alav. Wow, a person could be subject to yisurim for supporting someone who doesn't use their das. Shneimar lach mecha yasimu mazor tachtecha ein tvuna bo. What does the word mazor mean? So says the Gemara, ve'ein mazor elo yisurim. Lach mecha yasimu. You give this guy bread, then you're going to have mazor. You're going to have yisurim. Where do we see this? Shneimar vayar Ephraim eschol yovi Yehuda ve'es mozro. That Ephraim saw that there was sickness, and Yehuda was the one who suffered. He saw that there was suffering from the word mizoro. So therefore, we see that the word mazor refers to Yisurim, and therefore one who supports someone who's not a bardas, he should be a bardas. He has capacity to be a bardas, but he's not using the noodle. So then also the rachem alav, and if you do support him, there will be Yisurim involved. And still another memra from Rebbe Lazar. Amar Rebbe Lazar, Kol Adam She'ein Bodeya, anyone who doesn't utilize their knowledge, l'sof gola, they will be exiled. Shene'emar Lachein Gola Ami Mi B'lidas. Those who don't have knowledge, those who don't have the appropriate use of knowledge, are going to be exiled. Amar Rebbe Lazar, another statement from him, Kol Bayis She'ein Divrei Torah Nishmoim Bo Balayla. This is a night. All of us are learning from our homes tonight. It just happens to be. So the Gemara says people where there's Torah that's heard in their homes at night, I should say the opposite. If a home doesn't have learning Torah at night, then chas v'shalom, Hashem should protect us. Eish ochlaso. Then that house, in theory, could be consumed by fire. Shene'emar, where do we get this from? Kol choshech tamun litzfunav te'achlehu eish lo nupach yera. That in every darkness there's hidden away for treasures, that a fire will not consume him. B'chule. And ein sarid, this pasuk speaks about a sarid. It says lo yunupach yera sarid be'oholo. Ein sarid al talmud chacham. Where do we see that the word sarid is a talmud chacham? Shene'emar Uvasiridim asher Hashem yikra. And that's what the pasuk said, that among the sridim, those who remain, those are the ones who Hashem calls. That's talking about the people who are the Talmidei Chachamim. V'amar Rebbe Lazar. Rebbe Lazar has yet another memra. Says the Gemara as follows. If there's someone who doesn't give Talmidei Chachamim to benefit from their property, if you're not supporting Talmidei Chachamim, Eino roa siman bracha la'olam. That person will never see a siman bracha. You need to support Talmidei Chachamim. Shene'emar, as the pasuk says, Ein sarid la'ochlo al kein lo yachil tuvo. There is no Talmud Chacham who is going to have food, and he needs to have food. And Ein Sarid ala Talmud Chacham, and we know, as we've already learned, that the word Sarid refers to a Talmud Chacham. Getting toward the bottom of Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph, Shneemar Uvasridim Asher Hashem Koreh. Bamar Rebbe Lazar, he has another memra. Kol she'ena mishayer pas al shulchano. Anyone who doesn't leave over a little bit of food, ena roa siman bracha le'olam, they will not see a siman bracha. Sin Emar, as the pasuk says, Ein sar la'ochlo al kain lo yachil tuvo. Same pasuk. However, there's a problem with this. Over here in this first memra of Rebbe Lazar, it seems that you're supposed to leave over a little food. The problem is, V'ha'amar Rebbe Lazar called him Mishayar psisim al shulchano. Anyone who leaves things over has done something wrong. Ki'ilu oved avodah zara. Shnamar ha'orchem lagad shulchan. Someone who sets their table for God, not G-O-D, but Gimel Dalid, which is a deity. It's a pagan type of worship. V'ha'mimalim lamini mimsach, which means that they're serving mini. Mini is also the name of a pagan deity, and you're giving him mimisach from the word nesach, you're giving them wine. So that's what the pasuk says. So that's a stira. The first memra of Rebbe Lazar seemed to say you need to make sure that you leave over some food. Don't be such a glutton. Leave over a bite. The second one says if you leave things over, you're a bal avodah zara. So obviously those are opposites. Says the Gemara, lo kasha ha'de'ika shlema behadei. In the second memra of Rebbe Lazar, where he says that it's like avodah zara, that's if you leave over a shlema behadei, where you leave over a whole loaf of bread, which apparently was typical for that avodah zara. But where you are just eating on your own and you have one bite of the bagel left, one bite of the steak left, it is seemingly appropriate from the Gemara to leave it over. And and then another statement still, Rebbe Lazar, V'amar Rebbe Lazar, kol machlif b'diburo. Anyone who is machlif b'diburo, they change the way they speak. They put on an accent. They pretend like they're not themselves. Ki'ilu oved avodah zara. This is not like them. It doesn't mean for a moment. It means if you're trying to completely hide yourself. Ki'ilu oved avodah zara ksiv hacha, because one pasuk says ve'isi ve'enav kimisa'ateya. This was talking about when Yaakov was trying to replace Esav for the brachos, Hakol kol Yaakov hayodayim de Esav, he said to his mother, I feel like I'm being misa'atei, I feel like I'm being deceitful. Uchsiv hasam, hevel hema maaseh tatuin. And the other pasuk says in regards to avodah zara that they are deceptive. So that's why it says that if a person were to behave and change their speech in such a way where they seemed like somebody else, that it's not a good thing. Rebbe Lazar, and this is something that is really unrelated to everything we've been learning, although halachically applicable. Kol mistakel be'erva. If a person looks at erva, kashto nin eres, their own bow will be emptied. And according to some of the Meforshim, that means that they will not be able to procreate. They will have challenges in the bedroom because of that. Shene'emar, area seur kashtecha. Area from the word erva. So that would mean your nakedness. Te'ur will pour out, right? To pour is ha'ara, is to pour out, will pour out your bow. According to some, it means you'll have no zera, but it's broadly speaking about impotence and the inability to perform in the bedroom. B'amar Rebbe Lazar, la'olam heve kavel. A person should always be receiving, or another way to speak about this, they should always be humble. Dekayam. And that will help them to be alive. Amar Zera, Afana Nami Tanina. We have this idea in regards to a Bayis Hamanuga, a house that might have tzaras. Bayis Afel, if a house is very dark, and when the Kohen comes to see if in fact there is a nega tzaras on the house, is the house a Bayis Hamanuga, but it's so dark. So the halacha is, Ein poscha no chalonos, liros nigo. You don't have to open the windows to see better. However you see, but you don't change the realities. And that's why the Gemara says, Shema Mina, keep things quiet, Keep things on the lowdown. Stop talking about yourself. Just be a regular, basic person. Don't bring things into the public space. Next, says the Gemara, just a handful of lines from the bottom of the page, 5, 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Amar Rabbi Tavi, Amar Rabbi Yoshio. Mai dichsiv sheol ve'otzer racham eret lo sava mayim. What does it mean when the pasuk says that there is a grave and there's a narrow part of the rechem, which is the uterus, and that the earth, the eretz, is lo sava mayim, that it's not satiated with water? Dechima inyan sheol etzel rechem. What does a kever have anything to do with a womb? Eladomar lach, the Gemara gives a fascinating comparison. Ma'rechem machnisu motzi, just like by a rechem, through tashmish amita, zera enters the uterus, and 9 months later after gestation, out comes a baby. Af sha'ol, the same exact thing is true with the earth. Machnisu motzi, beautiful. The same thing is true with the earth. We bury our loved ones when they pass away, and by tchias hamesim, they'll come out of the ground. No different than a kever. That's why they're put together. V'halo dvarim kal v'chomer. And the Gemara says, I can even prove it to you with one of our Yud Gimel Midos she'ator nidreshes behin, which is a kal v'chomer. Uma rechem, just like a uterus, shemachnisin bo b'chashai. When the zera enters into the body, it's b'chashai. There's no people making, there's no one who's standing around. It's done b'tzina. But there, motziin mimenu bekole kolos. There, the baby cries when he's born. So the knisa is quiet, and the hotzah is with crying. So sheol, when a person is put into the ground, shemachnisin bo bekolos, when people are crying and people are wailing when someone is buried, eino din shemotziin mimenu bekole kolos. But then we'll see that when they're born, people will be cheering. Oh my gosh, my loved one is alive. What a powerful idea. Mikan tshuva laomrim ein tchias hamesim min Torah. From here, we can see that again, for the 20th time approximately, that tchias hamesim is hinted to in the Torah. On-the-Daf Elio, we have a brisa. Tzadikim she'asi lekadosh baruch hu la'achyosan einan chozron la'afron. If there's a tzaddik who's going to be resuscitated, right? He's going to be part of the Tchias HaMesim. He'll never become Afar again. Shenemar v'hayu hanishar b'tzion v'nosar b'shalayim kadosh ye'amer lo. He will be called the Holy One. Kol hakasuv l'chaim b'Yerushalayim. And what does this drasha mean? Ma kadosh lo lam kayim. Just like the Eivishter, he's holy. He will always be alive. This pasuk says that the Nishar B'Tzion, they are also called Kadosh. Avheim la'olam kayam, and they too, the tzaddikim who were part of the Tchias HaMesim, they too will also never become Afar again. And that brings us to the top of Tzadi Beis and Beis. Mirza Hashem will get through the thin lines, and then we will stop. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. V'im tomar osan shanim. Those years, Sha'asi Kadosh Baruch Hu lechadesh bahen es olamo, where Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to renew the world. Some say this is in the phase after the 6,000-year mark. Shneimar v'niskav Hashem levado bayomahu, that Kadosh Baruch Hu will be alone during that tkufa of time. Tzadikin mahem osin, what will they be doing then? Says the Gemara, Kadosh Baruch Hu osa lahem knafayim kinesharim. Fascinating thing that they're going to have wings at that time after the world as we know it is over. Again, these are very, very lofty concepts, and I don't know much about them, but they'll have wings. V'shatan al pnei hamayim. Sometimes you see birds just kind of wings out and just coasting over the water, going in loops. And that's what's going to happen. And the tzaddikim will be doing that. Their neshamas will have wings of some kinds, again, beyond our pay grade. Shneamar, as the pasuk says, Al kain lo nira behamir aretz uvmot harim belev yamin. We should not fear that when the earth is going to be changed over and when the mountains fall apart into the seas. Maybe the tzaddikim in this phase will be suffering from some type of physical pain. That those who have hope in Hashem will have a lot of strength. Yalu aver k'nesharim. They're going to have wings like nesharim, like eagles. Yarutzu v'lo yigav. They're going to run and not become tired. Yelchu. They're going to go v'lo yiafu, and they won't be tired at all. They won't be weak at all. Again, very difficult to understand any of this. Maybe we should actually say that people's bones will become afar again, even the tzaddikim, because Yechezkel resuscitated people and they then subsequently died. Again, this is not found in the Gemara, but the Mefarshim explain this. They then subsequently died and they did become dust again. So Al Kasha says the Gemara, Sover lo command Amar be'emes mashal haya. That really the story of Yechezkel was nothing more than a mashal. The Tanya, the Brisa writes. Rebbe Lazar Omer, Rebbe Lazar says, Mesim shehecheya Yechezkel omden al raglehem v'amru shira v'mesu. The people that Yechezkel resuscitated, they stood on their feet, they sang a shira, and then they died. Ma shira amru. What song did they sing? Hashem memis betzedek u'mechaya berachamim. That was what they sang according to one shita. The Bryce is going to quote a host of other shitas. Rabbi Yeshua Omer, Shira zu amru, Hashem memis u'mechaya morid sheol vayal. A little bit different, that Hashem puts people to death and he also resuscitates them and he brings them down to their burial place and also brings them out of their burial place. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, emes mashal haya. He says that it was it is the language is difficult to understand. He says that it is true and it is a parable. Amar lo Rav Nechemya, im emes lama mashal, im mashal lama emes. A mashal is meant to represent an idea. If the mashal is emes, if it is reality, then just say what you mean. Why are you saying what it is? Just say what it is. Ella says the Gemara, be'emes, the truth is that mashal haya. It really just was a parable. The story of Yechezkel was nothing more than a parable, and they didn't actually get resuscitated. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, a third of the way down, shel Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer, Rabbi Eliezer Beno, shel Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer, Mesim Sheche Yechezkel Ala Eretz Yisrael. They made Aliyah. He disagrees with the previous shita. He says it wasn't just a mashal. These people were real, and they made Aliyah. V'nasu Nashim, they got married. V'holi Dubanim Uvanos, and they had children. Amar Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira al Ragla, Amar Rabbi Yehuda got up and said, "Ani mibnei v'nehem." I'm one of the descendants of the Tchias HaMesim that Yechezkel put into place. V'halalu tefillin sheiniach li avi ava mehem, and I have the family tefillin from my ancestors who themselves were resuscitated by Yechezkel. Thank you. So says the Gemara, and fascinating stories. Let's just learn a little bit more. I know we're going to be a little bit late, but we just have to catch up. Who were the people that Yechezkel, according to these shitas, because not everybody said, I don't know how they deal with the psukim, but who were the ones that were actually resuscitated and brought back to life? Tchias HaMesim by Yechezkel, Machlokes. Amarav, Elu b'nei Ephraim. These were people from Shevet Ephraim. Shemanu laketz vato. They made a mistake when they were in Mitzrayim as to how long they were supposed to be there. Whatever math equation they made, they left when they left, and because they left early, they died. Shenemar of Bnei Ephraim shusalach uvered beno v'sachas beno ve'eladab beno v'sachas beno v'zavad beno v'shusalach beno ve'ezer ve'elad v'haragum. They were all killed. V'haragum anshe gasano the Imbarts. All of these people. Some of them had the same names, different, just cousins. And the Gemara says over here that based on the psukim that they were all killed. Uchsiv, and then the pasuk says, "Vayisabel Ephraim avim yomim rabim vayvo echav lenachamo," and then they were sitting shiva. And then the pasuk says, "Elu b'nei Adam shekaf u'Shmuel amar." Excuse me. Shmuel says, "No, these are not the people that Yechezkel resuscitated, but rather they were somebody else." Elu b'nei Adam shekafu b'tchias hamesim. Really, there were people who were kofar b'tchias hamesim, the people who Yechezkel resurrected, the people who Yechezkel brought back to life. They were actually kofrim. Shenemar vayomer Elai ben Adam ha'atzamos ha'eleh kol beis Yisrael hema hinei omrim yavshu atzmosenu va'avda sikvasenu nigzarnu lanu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that in regards to the human being, that these bones, they all belong to Yidden. And basically the pasuk says that their bones have dried up and that they're doomed. And that was an example of the people who Yechezkel resurrected, but in turn they actually died again and their bones dried up again. And Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amari says, no, the people who Yechezkel resurrected were still different. Elu b'nei Adam she'ein behem lachluchis shel mitzvah. These were people who didn't have even a lachluchis, even a mashahu of doing mitzvos. That's very difficult to do because we know from other places in Shas that a Jew is malei mitzvos kirimon, even a yid who's not a gishmaka yid, he's not a ben Torah, he's not koveitim, but he's probably mechabed his parents, he probably keeps the Ten Commandments pretty well. He's not a zero. But there's a person over here who was resurrected who didn't even have a lachluchis shel mitzvah. It's a pretty big insult to say that to someone. Shneimar ha'atzam osayvesho shimud dvar Hashem. Rav Yitzchak Nafcha Amar, no, Elu b'nei Adam shechipu es hahechal kulo shkatzim u'remasim. There were people who basically covered the entire inside of the Beis Hamikdash, and they had pictures of these pagan animals, shkatzim u'remasim. Shneimar, the pasuk says, "Va'avo, I showed up, ve'erev v'hinei kol tavnis remes uvehema sheketz." I saw all of these things carved into the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. V'chol gilulei Beis Yisrael mechuka al kir saviv. They surrounded me on the walls. It's an unbelievable thing to do. Chsiv hasam be'eviran aleim saviv saviv. And in the pasuk by the pasuk that where Yechezkel did the Tchias Hamesim, it basically said that Ha'evirani aleim saviv saviv, that Kadosh Baruch Hu led them over around and around. Again, a deeper idea. A look in the Mefarshim over here. And then lastly for today, we're going to just talk about Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan Amar Elu Mesim She Bikas Dura, that the people that Yechezkel resurrected were the people from Bikas Dura. From the Bika is a valley of Dura. And this is in Babel. V'amar Rav Yochanan, Minahar Eshel ad Rabas Bikas Dura. This is just a location. That's what the place was called. Shebeshah shehegla Nebuchadnezzar harasha es Yisrael. But Nebuchadnezzar harasha, when he was exiling the Jewish people, hayu bahen bachrim shahayu meganen es hachama beyofyan. They disgraced the sun with their good looks. These people were extremely good looking. Ad kedei kach, the Gemara is explicit about how the Babylonian women felt about them. V'hayu kastios roos osan, the Bavel women, they saw these men, b'shofo zavos. They instantly began to have some type of arousal experience. Unbelievable thing. Amr levale, and they mentioned it to their husbands. I don't know, that's very unique. Uvale and the melech, their husbands then told the king, Tziva hamelech v'haragum. Then the king had them killed. The problem was that even in their death, they were very good looking. So when the women saw their corpses, v'adayin hayu shofo zavos, they still were having some type of a flow from their body out of arousal. Then Siva HaMelech were Masum, and these are the people who he had resurrected. We'll stop right here at Tanu Rabbanon, and Emir Tashem. Tomorrow we'll pick up with yet another daf. My apologies for the last-minute change on location. Looking forward to learning again in person tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.